Hey guys, welcome back to another movie review. Hope you guys are enjoying the videos. Like I said, we're going to be pumping out videos left and right this weekend. We have like a lot of movies coming out this weekend. We have the one which we're reviewing today, Those Who Wish Me Dead, and then we also have Army of the Dead, and then we have The Woman in the Window. So I'll be reviewing all these films this weekend, so make sure you check out all these reviews. But let's get into Those Who Wish Me Dead. Directed and written, of course, by Taylor Sheridan. It stars Angelina Jolie, Nicholas Hoult, John Bernthal, Tyler Perry makes an appearance. And it tells a story of a smoke jumper. I'm just reading the synopsis on my TV. There's a smoke jumper who has dealing with some trauma from her work that has happened, and a little boy comes into her life, and this little boy is being hunted, and now it is her job to now protect her, to protect him at all costs. And that's pretty much the premise of Those Who Wish Me Dead. Now, Taylor Sheridan's work, for those who don't know Taylor Sheridan's work, he has written the Sicario films, the first Sicario film, and then Sicario Day of the Soldado. He has also been a director. His first directorial effort was Wind River, starring Elizabeth Olsen and Jeremy Renner. And I found Wind River to be fine. I didn't love Wind River as much as everyone else did, but I found it to be solid for what it was. Not great, but it was fine. So going into Those Who Wish Me Dead, I was really, hoping that it would be like an Aaron Sorkin effect, because I actually think that The Trial of Chicago 7 is a better film than Molly's Game. So I was hoping that Taylor Sheridan would follow in the footsteps of an Aaron Sorkin and start to see the progression of a really, hopefully, talented filmmaker. And I'm going to pull up my notes right now. There are some things about Those Who Wish Me Dead that do work. The first thing that I will mention right off the bat is that I do think that it does possess some really engaging thrills, because it does not set itself up in a typical fashion where you know where the next quote unquote jump scare. I don't know how you would define a thrill scare or whatever you call it, but when the thrilling parts happen, they're set up in a way that are engaging and investing, and they do not feel like that they're there just for effect. So that part I really enjoyed first off. Second part that I would say is that I think the structure itself is also engaging. I think that the way they paced the film, I know it's kind of, people were calling it a slow burn. I don't think it was necessarily a slow burn. I found the pace to be perfectly fine, and I think that it's weird because it feels like it's supposed to develop character, but we'll get into my problems in a second with the film. But in terms of just the actual pace and the length of the film, in terms of the setup, I found it to be good. And at points, I thought it was visually interesting, particularly, of course, when you've seen it in the posters when they eventually get into the fire. And that part I found to be visually interesting, how they played around with the colors of orange and the setups of the trees. And obviously, there's a lot of VFX going on. And I thought the VFX themselves looked good for how they utilized them. Unfortunately, though, as I had just laid out, there are some issues with this film. And unfortunately, if I were to summarize the film, this is unfortunately a disappointment, because there are a couple of issues with the film. The first of which, as I just laid out, is that I felt that the film was rushed a lot. Because I think the setup is good. The first, I would say, 30 minutes or so are engaging, and they do set it up in a way that looks to be, hopefully, quite good. But unfortunately, it falls, and it stumbles, and it kind of rushes itself towards the end. Like at one point we're at this particular area, and then at another point we're already in the fire, and it's like we kind of needed a little bit more setup, a little more development, which leads to my next problem, which is I think that the development for the characters is sorely lacking. Mostly like no arcs really to speak of. I mean, Angelina Jolie's character is given one little story, but nothing really comes of it. You don't see her really change throughout the film. And I really wanted that from these characters, and unfortunately we didn't really get anything like that. And the villain was the performer who played the main villain. You guys know who I'm talking about, not Nicholas Hoult, but the other guy. He was hamming it up. But towards the end, he was hamming it up a little bit. And at some points I found it to be okay, and at other points I was just like, okay, tone it down a little bit. But particularly in the third act, though, getting back to the rushing, the way it was rushed. The third act felt very just quick. Like we were just at this point and this point, and then bam, we're at the end. It's like I kind of feel like we kind of needed a little bit more time. So it's weird because the structure is good, and the pacing at the beginning is good, but once we get towards the end and the elements start to present themselves, it doesn't really feel like it's paced correctly. So basically what I'm saying is that the setup is good, the way that it pays itself off is not, unfortunately. And most importantly, this is honestly kind of surprising for me to say. The writing is not that great. There's a lot of times where it does hold potential, but in how they present the dialogue and just the dialogue itself is not what I expect from Taylor Sheridan. And um, I think it also comes in that there were other writers that helped Taylor with writing the script, so that might have contributed to it a little bit. But um, nevertheless, though, for what Taylor Sheridan has put together, it holds solid thrills, engaging structure, and at points a visually interesting production. What it unfortunately lacks, though, is development in characters. Feels rushed throughout, especially towards the third act. And most importantly, the writing is surprisingly generic, yet it does hold lots of potential. There are many points where you see the writing, at points trying to salvage itself, but it just kind of still falls flat. To summarize it, the setup is promising, but the payoff is disappointing. And I just think that with a little bit more time, I feel like this could have been a solid 2 hours. How long is the film? Yeah, it's about an hour and a half. I feel like an extra 30 minutes would have really helped this film a lot. Um, but for what we got, it's not terrible. It's not, it's not dog shit. It's definitely not. I would still say it's entertaining in certain points, and as I said, um, once it actually starts to move and you actually start to see certain elements play out, certain elements are interesting, but it's just the pacing and the way that they're delivered does make the film fall flat. And I do think that the film, in general, to summarize it, I think is a disappointment, but there are some elements that do keep the movie interesting. And in that front, I would say maybe you should check it out. But to compare and contrast, Wind River is definitely a better film than this. But um, it is disappointing, unfortunately, and I was expecting more out of it. Again, an extra 30 minutes would have helped the film a lot. But for what we have, it's not terrible, but it's far from great.